Good morning, folks. As mentioned in the daily financial news, we have our Monday expert, Mr. Greg Dickerson. How you doing, sir?
Doing great, Michael. Good to see you.
Nice to see you as well. So one of the things that I saw or was thinking about over the weekend is builders. And the reason I started thinking about builders is, we've been underbuilding for about a decade, right? Since the last crash. But I actually started thinking about builders and realizing that most builders run very odd cash flow statements, right? They get chunks of money at different increments. And when I go back and I think about what's been going on in their world, I'm just wondering if we might have a whole bunch of bankruptcies in kind of the small and medium-sized builders. It won't be the publicly traded because they can always go to the markets and, raise funds and all of that. But, the private companies, because they've been dealt a pretty odd hand, right? They probably sold pre-sold lots at one price. Then they have all these commodities and input costs going up, and then labor's going up. And, if they can't pass on that increase to the original buyer, they might be losing money per house. So as somebody who's done that, I just thought I'd talk to you. And is that possible?
Oh yeah. It's a very difficult business, and it's hard, to make profit. And there's so many variables between your insurance, your overhead, the construction cycle, time frame on the projects, things like that. And, I talked to a builder the other day that's, I don't know, he's doing 20, 30 houses a year and he's breaking even, so
That's amazing.
where builders can protect themselves is you put escalation clauses in your contract that, right now all bets are off the table, prices go up, you just add that to the cost. But at the end of the day, if the homeowner doesn't have the money, or your client doesn't have the money, they don't pay you, what do you do? And that's what happens. But what got builders in trouble the first time, 08, 09, was their land positions. They were buying land, they were building on spec because everything was just booming.
Mm-hmm.
So they learned from that, and they didn't take land positions after that. So what can catch them off guard this time, and why are they so guarded right now? Because, again, we're at a peak, right? With prices being like they are, with, the material and labor going through the roof like it is, and just being so unstable. Builders are worried that, all of a sudden during mid-cycle, if they're building a house for somebody, they just walk away. If you walk away, all you're going to lose is your deposit.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not on the hook for anything in terms of, a production house, a built spec house that somebody's building. So builders are really worried about that. And if they're building for a custom client, and a lot of builders borrow the money for their client until the end, and then the client takes it out with a permanent loan. Well, what happened in 08, 09, the banks pulled back. So builders have that to worry about. So what if interest rate change? What if something happens? What if the banks really aren't as healthy as they say they are, which a lot of them aren't? I mean, there's always banks failing in every environment. That rug can get pulled out from underneath them and underneath their borrowers. So, builders are very cautious. And, you've got a couple of different business models. You have four fee builders who are saying, Michael, I'll build you a house for 500 grand. Right now the builder has no clue what the house is really going to cost between now and the time it ends, or how long it's going to take. And they can't guarantee any of that.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you, because again, most people, I have an accounting and economics and MBA. So, right, financial statements are something I'm very comfortable with. Most people out there know about net worth, which I'll call the balance sheet.
Right.
Most people live in their income statement, but most people don't realize the most important financial statement is actually the cash flow statement. Your net worth and your income statements could be fine, but if you have a cash flow issue, cash flow statement will signal bankruptcy first. And I was just wondering how the chunks of money come in, because I'm guessing there's a lot of outlay up front for builders, and really they don't make their chunk until the very end. I mean, it could be 6 months kind of from point A to point B. It's months, right?
Yeah, well, it's not really like that. So generally you get a deposit up front. So builders, unless you're building on spec, so builders will get a working capital deposit up front, 10, 15, 20%, depending on the project, depending on the customer. And then you draw as you progress. So you'll get that's your deposit. So what's deferred basically is your profit at the back end.
Okay.
But you get costs along the way. And then, if it's a custom builder, they might be billing, progress billings as they go along.
Kind of like monthly kind of thing?
Percentage of completion. Yeah. It
monthly.
could be, depending on the project, could be weekly, could be monthly, could be, very minimum monthly. Or I mean, that's the minimum is monthly. And some people will do it weekly, depends on how big the project is, what it is. Some small projects might be, beginning and end, that type of thing. So it's done a number of different ways. Now the production builders are different. Okay. So they're building a lot of those guys are borrowing the money and they're building the house themselves. So
Yep.
that's where you can get into that cash flow game, that if you have sales that are stalled for some reason at the back end, you don't get that chunk in to keep going.
Right.
That's where things can really fluctuate and catch you off guard. But, it's cash flow is a tricky game, and a lot of builders don't watch their cash flow forecasts. And,
It's a very
money,
lumpy is what
it
I'm
is. And
envisioning
then
is
you run the
lumpy.
risk of people not paying, when
Yeah.
so if it's a bank loan, you're pretty much, guaranteed the money's going to come in from the bank on a regular basis. But if you're working for somebody who's paying cash or whatever, that's your risk there, is that they don't pay.
Yeah. Again, so I'm wondering, when you think about this, and it's always hard to tell, do you think there are some builders out there, it'll probably be the small to medium sized one, non-publicly traded, that because input costs have gone up and labor shortages and delays and all of that, do you think there's some cash flow stress in the system, or am I just kind of overthinking
Oh
it?
yeah. I'm sure there is, but I think the bigger builders are probably more at risk than you think.
Oh, really? Okay.
Just because, just because they can issue stock and they can issue bonds and things like that, that's not free and
No,
it's
it's
not
not
cheap.
free. That's true.
Yeah. I mean, it's cheaper than it has been in a long time, but yeah, the bigger builders, man, they're just rolling cash flow. Those guys aren't making money. They're huge operations with big salaries and jets and this
Really?
and that. And, they're the big
Yeah.
corporate,
Yeah. Corporate good
bureaucratic
life.
overhead, right? Exactly. So, they're making all their money on financing, insurance,
Interesting.
title companies, all the ancillary stuff.
Sure.
They're not making any money on the houses they're building for the most part. It's all, it's all coming through on the back end. So
Interesting.
yeah, those are the guys that are, when you start looking at their cash flow statements, and you can see those, if you're
Yeah, they're
interested, you can
publicly
go
traded.
look at,
Yeah.
you can look at the public companies and kind of look at what they're doing. And, the way they declare profit is very interesting because, you can roll inventory, right? So you can make that balance sheet and that income statement look however you want to make it look.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of that's the big thing as an accountant, right? You have discretion on how a lot of things could be recognized on the balance sheet and income statement. The cash flow statement, you can't muck with that. It's cash. Just can't mess with that. So that's interesting about the big builders, because you're right. Input costs. I mean, you talk to builders all the time. Like if you started a project in June or May of last, or let's say June 1st of last year, and you're looking today, your commodities or whatever, the cost of that house is 20% higher, 25% higher, probably.
Yeah. And the good news is most builders, earn a percentage above the cost that they're building for. So cost plus 10, cost plus 20, however they're doing it. So generally they can pass that overage along, and the more the house costs, the more money you're going to make. The problem is that it's taken longer. So you have more overhead to produce. So it's kind of a negligible thing. But from the standpoint of where we are in the cycle, it's, this is the best time ever for builders, because everybody knows, and that clause is in your contract now that, hey, I can't control costs, I can't control time frames. So from that standpoint, all you got to do is track your billing. And that's where builders really get in trouble, is they don't track their costs accurately enough, and they miss things. And, that's where problems come into play, is just not accurately tracking the costs and accounting for all your costs.
So escalation clauses certainly are in all the new contracts, but I got to imagine a year ago, probably weren't in most contracts, I would think.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't. And people had penalty clauses that were doing projects. So it was a real problem until this year. And even now, a lot of people are afraid to, ask for things, and they're afraid to do that and just say, hey, I can't guarantee prices. They just, okay, I'll make it, whatever it takes, they just want to make you happy. And they're like, hey, I got it. Don't worry about it. We'll settle up later. And then that's the ones where they get themselves in trouble, is, trying to settle up later. And all of a sudden the homeowner who thought the house was going to be 500, now it's 550. And they're like, hey, I'm not paying for that. You didn't tell me anything.
Yeah.
So that's the other one.
Or even worse, I'm not qualified for 550. I want to buy, but I can't buy. Yeah.
Now, if that's the case, generally you're going to have a line of buyers behind this one. So that's where builders have a real advantage if they're building a production house. Right. But if it's a custom home, that's different. If you're building for somebody and they say, I ain't paying you at the end, you didn't tell me what it was going to cost, then it's a battle.
Yeah. I just think there is, anytime everybody thinks something is good, I'm always looking for where they might be wrong. And I do think right now there's a general theme that builders are crushing it. Builders can jack up prices, escalation clauses. But I think there's some sins being buried.
The trades is who's making the money right now. The material suppliers and the trades. That's where the money is. It's not the builder. It's the developer selling you the dirt, to the builder or to the homeowner, and then it's the trades contractors. That's who's making money right now, because they can call their own shots.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Well,
know, who else are you going
folks,
to get?
yeah, exactly. Well, folks, do yourself a favor. If you haven't read Rich Dad Poor Dad in a while, go ahead and do that again. I need to read it again because I need to think about being Rich Dad, not Robert and Kim. Greg has taught me that. Something else, folks, check out below. Greg Dickerson has his own playlist on this channel with hundreds of hours of material. And Greg, how can people find you and be part of your world?
Yep, gregdickerson.com. So that's where, my YouTube channel, podcast, all that information is and lives. So go check it out.
Thanks, buddy. Have a wonderful week. And again, thank you for your service.
Yeah, you too. Happy Memorial Day.